Bilal, we can hear you.
Excellent. Thank you. I think we're ready to start. Welcome to all our panelists and respondents. It is an absolute delight once again to be facilitating and moderating this session on behalf of the Turquoise Harmony Institute. It is going to be a very educational session because there's some very interesting document that has been recently published and by the Alliance for Shared Values, together with other Hizmet-related structures. Absolutely informative. I went through the document. It is awesome. It is very enriching. It is very inspiring. So today, this particular session will be looking closely at the document and how local experts in South Africa have aligned themselves to this particular document. So without much further ado, I would like to welcome all our panelists as well as our respondents. We are going to have an absolutely delightful session here. Maybe each one of you can say hello. Maybe we can start with Osman.
Hello, everyone. My name is Osman Öztoprak. I guess that's enough for now.
Alp Aslandogan, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Hello, merhaba, salam everybody. Alp Aslandoğan, I'm the director of Alliance for Shared Values. I'm currently in a train actually, so I may need to mute myself from time to time. So okay. Osman will be the lead for us today.
And then we welcome Amina. You would like to say hello to the viewers and listeners?
Yes, hi, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are. Everybody, I'm Amina Frenzy. I'm in Johannesburg. I'm a journalist.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And Shabuddin?
I'm based in Cape Town. My name is Shabuddin Romani. I'm a social activist, ex-headmaster of a high school.
Excellent. Thank you. And then we have Bilal Mohagi.
Hi, assalamu alaikum. Hi, everybody. My name is Bilal Moahi. I live in Pretoria. I'm a social justice activist and a human rights activist.
Okay, right. We will kick off immediately with this session. We have about 1.5 hours for the session, so I would like to go straight into the program. Two very, very interesting individuals have contributed to the development of a document which outlines the core values of the Hizmet movement. Now, we all know what the Hizmet movement is, but many new listeners and viewers that are tuned in today will be thoroughly enriched by the outcomes of this particular discussion today. So the two individuals that contributed to the development of this very interesting document is Dr. Alp Aslandoğan, who is the executive director of the Alliance for Shared Values, a non-profit organization that promotes bringing together citizens of diverse backgrounds around shared values of humanity. This particular esteemed organization was formed by a group of individuals and organizations that are associated with the Hizmet social movement, inspired by the Turkish Islamic scholar and preacher Fethullah Gülen. Local partners of the Alliance for the Shared Values focuses on interfaith and intercultural dialogue. And the other individual that will be giving us some background about this document is Mr. Osman Öztoprak, who completed his undergraduate education at Marmara University, the Department of Physics Education in 1997. In 1999, he served as the founding assistant director of the Pioneer Academy of Science in New Jersey. He continued his duty as school principal at Pioneer Academy of Science until 2006. He thereafter completed a master's degree in education from the Rutgers University in New Jersey in 2001, and another master's program in international relations and diplomacy. Mr. Öztoprak has volunteered in dialogue activities since 2001, especially in Turkish Cultural Center and Peace Islands Institute of New York and New Jersey. So let's start off with you, Mr. Osman. Can you introduce the Alliance for Shared Values, giving us the mission of this esteemed organization and the activities that this organization engage in?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Rajabi. Yes, Alliance for Shared Values. I can give a gist of the gist of the question, and Dr. Aslan Doğan, who is our executive director, can contribute anytime he wants. He is traveling right now, so he might have some connection issues. Okay. So Alliance for Shared Values was founded in 2012 in New York as a Hizmet umbrella organization of the nonprofits dealing with the interfaith works in the United States. And so Alliance for Shared Values has three main areas of activities. One is to be an information center for those who is willing to research on Hizmet and Hizmet movement activities in the United States and around the world, and then works as an information center for the media who wants to write stories and produce something on Hizmet. So media outlets, televisions, reporters, they find Alliance for Shared Values as a go-to place for their work. And thirdly, as I mentioned in the beginning, we function as an umbrella organization for interfaith dialogue organizations in the US and Canada. So briefly, that's what the Alliance does since 2012.
Excellent, excellent. So it's clear evidence that you're doing remarkable work in terms of dialogue and bringing people together. So it wasn't difficult for you to put together a great document to outline some of the values of the Hizmet movement. Now, Mr. Dr. Aslan Doğan, what was you was one of the persons that was instrumental in putting together this document of the core values. What was the purpose to compile such an interesting document based on the core values of the Hizmet movement? What was the main reason and background for this whole purpose?
Yes, the values of the movement, of course, have been there all along in its literature, also in its projects, in its culture. But especially during the 2000s, when the movement became more prominent in Turkey, with nearly 1 million participants and more impact on the society, it began to make the news because of political reasons. And as you are well aware, when anything makes the news for political reasons, it is usually not very positive, or it may not be reflecting the true nature of the phenomenon, be it a person or a group or a project. So we felt the need that the movement has to be told, the story of the movement and the nature of the movement has to be explained in an objective way. And this is a movement of values. So our work on preparing this document began in the 2014-2015 era and culminated in this final document to underline the fact that this is not a person movement, it is a postmodern renewal movement that is humanistic, based on a religion, but it is also humanistic, open to everybody. And it highlights the fact that it is based on values that are exemplified in the participants.
Excellent. No, thank you so much. And coming back to you, Mr. Öztoprak, right? How do you expect this document that is so extensive and so informative and educationally, there's such values, how do you expect this document to be used by the global Hizmet community?
Yes, that there was a need to clarify, crystallize the Hizmet values in a shorter form. Hizmet has been functioning, doing services around the world based on these values, which is known to those people who have in contact with the Hizmet, either they volunteer or they were introduced to the Hizmet through the works of Mr. Gülen. They've studied in their schools. So those people, it was very obvious to them. So there was a need to explain to the wider world what does Hizmet stand for, what their values are. So the first thing is to crystallize what the Hizmet stands for through its values. The second is for our future generations. So there's going to be our future generations going to continue to do a great work moving forward in the coming years. So it's going to be a guide for them as well, for those people who are interested in Hizmet work, who would like to contribute in any way they can. They will look at these values and they will find meaning in these values, and they will be part of this social projects in their localities. So it is to crystallize the movement's values. The second is to serve as a guide for today and for years to come.
Okay, no, thank you. Later on in a discussion, you are going to give us some of these values. There are 12 of them. So we are going to look at focus and zoom into those values just now. But Mr. Or Dr. Aslandergan, do you believe that this particular document that you're painstakingly put together is applicable to all contexts and countries, or can there be different interpretations in identified selected countries? You're muted.
I have a virtual background, but I'm in a train right now, so I need to pause myself sometimes. But we think that the principles and values are applicable to Hizmet globally. What the difference may be in their priorities and in their applications, like what kind of projects are they reflected in, that may differ. But we believe that these principles and values are internalized by, or ideally internalized by Hizmet participants all around the world.
Excellent. So there is an opportunity for certain countries to look at these values and tailor make it to suit their own individualistic needs. Am I correct?
The reflection of the values into life, of course, that's a big thing that will imply many projects, and there will be different styles. And of course, depending on the needs of a locality, certain values will need to be prioritized. Excellent. So that will mean in the application, there will be a wide spectrum. But in terms of the values and the principles, we believe that those are universal.
Okay. And later on, we're going to hear from some of our respondents in South Africa, where they're going to look at their own personal experiences of the Hizmet movement and how these values, talk to some of the work that has been done here. Right. So now going back to the vision of the Hizmet movement, as you know, the main vision of the Hizmet movement is where every human being is treated with dignity and accepted for who they are. Human rights are protected, and any form of diversity that does not contradict fundamental human rights is seen as richness. People are sensitive to the challenges of humanity, and people of different religions, cultures, and worldviews enter dialogue and empathize with each other. And then another vision is to share and cooperation are cherished and people live in peace and harmony. And I think that is the vision of most countries, where people want to live in peace and harmony. Now, looking at that vision, there are basically 12 values. Could we ask Mr. Osman to talk to 6 of those values, the first 6 of the values, and thereafter Dr. Aslandergan can introduce us to the other 6. So just very briefly tell the viewers and the listeners about 6 of the first 6 values of this core document.
Yeah, the first value is to respect for humans and fundamental human rights. Hizmet participants, wherever they are, whichever locality they live in, and whatever kind of project they do, they believe that every human being has inherent value as being a human, and everyone should be treated with dignity. So every person is equal as a human being and before the law, and no person is superior to anyone else. Hizmet participants uphold all human rights and freedom expressed in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I guess the first value lays the groundwork for all the other coming values. Maybe I have to clarify one thing, that the way that these values are listed does not denote a hierarchy. So that's one thing that we should maybe look at these values, even though the first being the most important, accepting people as equal and treating them dignity is the foundation for all other values coming later on the list. But each value is equally important. Each value should be equally cherished and applied in Hizmet people's lives. So social justice and equal opportunity are requirements for equality among people. So that is, I guess, the important part of this Hizmet work reflected on this value. So we can treat everybody with dignity. We can respect their rights as human being, and expect them to be treated equally. But social justice and doing work towards social justice and equal opportunity, providing people with opportunities so that they can rise to their potential and they can bring out their maximum to first to improve themselves, and second to be a benefit to the society. So this is important. Just respecting solely is good, but actually in this value, Hizmet has been working and will continue to work to bring social justice and create opportunities for people to improve themselves. So education is one of them. So in this, even though it's not written here, but this goes to the education, health services, helping people to get to know one another. So this is an important part. And from the last sentence, the second one is the respect for the rule of law. So Hizmet, born and became transnational, born in Turkey and became transnational movement, but Hizmet movement participants live in this different parts of the world. And right now, there are people from different backgrounds, different countries, different ethnicities who find space in Hizmet movement. So they contribute in different means from different countries. So wherever you are, whichever country you live in, one thing that is important is to respect for the rule of law. So whatever the law of the land is for everybody, and Hizmet participants should respect the rule of law. The third one is the peaceful and positive action. So as we know that the Hizmet, wherever they go, wherever they are, they look at the field and they try to assess what is needed the most. Hizmet does not go to every place and say, oh, there is we're going to open school, we're going to open hospital. No, whatever is needed. There are some countries, there is no school, but there are hospitals. There are some countries, there are no hospitals, there are no schools, but there are water fountains. So this is an important part, peaceful and positive action. What can you do positively? Instead of being a reactionary, how can you help and contribute and be a positive factor in the society? So Hizmet is a peaceful movement. Hizmet participants reject using violence as a political tool. Hizmet participants prefer positive and constructive action and reject hostility-driven and destructive actions. That is important, rejecting any kinds of violence, even though to seek your rights, it's going to come later on. If you want to, the means towards the positive ends has to be also positive and peaceful. The fourth one is empowerment of women. Hizmet participants are committed to the ideal that women are provided with equal opportunity and can contribute to all aspects of society without discrimination, and they strive to meet this ideal in all activities. So this is one thing that Hizmet also does around the world. Equal opportunity and comes with education, starts with education. So unfortunately, in many parts of the world, not everyone can access the quality education. And when people do not receive quality education in their early ages, and they start, it's difficult for them to seek jobs or seek positions in the life and be their best in their lives. So education is important, and Hizmet does open schools for girls' education and provide training for girls so they can apply these skills in their lives. The fifth one is ethical action. Hizmet participants pay attention to both ethical norms and moral principles in their activities. They abide by fundamental ethical principles, including honesty, trustworthiness, harmlessness, and fairness. They believe that legitimate and rightful goals should be obtained through legitimate and rightful means. So if your ideals are all good, but if your means are not positive and peaceful, that is not the way to go. Hizmet always puts projects on the field and treats people in a positive manner. So they believe that the legitimate and rightful goals should be obtained through legitimate and rightful means. And the sixth one, this is my last value, respect for diversity and pluralism. Hizmet participants see collective and individual diversity as richness as long as they do not contradict fundamental human rights. This is important because there is a subtle notion here, is that the people have all kinds of ideas, different perspectives, different ways of life. All should be cherished and respected as long as these ideas do not contradict with the other people's fundamental rights. If these ideals are abusive and racist in a sense, so they should not be allowed. But people can have different ideas, and diversity in their thoughts is appreciated and cherished as long as they do not contradict fundamental human rights of everyone. They adopt an attitude necessary to avoid conflicts that stem from differences in sacred beliefs. So this is also a Hizmet value. People cherish their sacred values and they value them highly. So attacking other values do not bring any positivity. It only creates more friction, more problems. So Hizmet participants abstain from these kinds of action and asks all their friends, partners to also stay away from attacking or seeing others' sacred values negatively. So that's all from me. So Dr. Abi.
Thank you so much. The 6 values that you have introduced to us, it's a clear demonstration of some of the things that we are missing in some societies, where where we are striving in our quest towards harmony, peace, and so on. So if these values are utilized and practiced, society will be such a better place to live in. Right, let's now go to Dr. Aslandogan. Right, now you can take us to the next 6 values so that we can get a perspective. The respondents will be later on giving us their personal experiences in their own places where they reside, and their interaction with the Hizmet movement and how some of these values they have observed in their in their experiences with the Hizmet movement. So now can you take us now through the next 6, Dr. Aslandogan?
May I ask our friend to display them again so that I can comment on the slides?
All right. Next one.
So
we've seen this one. move on to number 7. Yeah, this one, voluntary participation.
So volunteerism is a key theme in Hizmet. Sometimes Mr. Gülen Hoca Efendi refers to the movement as the movement on volunteers. The emphasis here is that people should take initiative and they should go beyond their regular responsibilities and serving just themselves and their families and serve something bigger. That is the core idea here. Volunteer to serve something bigger than you and your immediate family and your clan or tribe. Serve something bigger. It is also emphasized here with this value that there should not be any coercion. Any kind of contribution should be voluntarily given and taken. Consultation in Arabic, shura or meshwara is an important concept in Hizmet. So even though individuals may be very talented, very intelligent, they may make mistakes, but when you consult the collective wisdom, you are less likely to make errors. So this is an important value that is cherished. And in decision making, especially for strategic decisions, it should never be made by a single individual. It should be a result of a consultation.
Correct.
So this value stems from the context and the background of the movement, because from time to time people made allegations that it is an extension of a political party or it is related to Turkish state. This is clearly saying that this is an independent movement. It is not related to any state or political party. And in a sense, the current troubles that Hizmet is going through is a result of trying to remain independent. If Hizmet accepted to be a satellite or puppet of the ruling party in Turkey, then the persecution probably would not happen, but Hizmet would lose its identity, its soul. So it is a civic moment.
There was a slight disturbance.
Yes, sometimes there's an announcement, so I need to mute myself. But it is a civic movement stemming from, inspired by a religion, but open to all humanity, and it will maintain its independence to basically preserve its soul.
Okay.
So this is about citizenship, being responsible citizens, not only of our neighborhood, our state, country, but also of the globe. That Hizmet participants should make contributions to humanity, be concerned about their problems, and try to serve wherever they can serve. In the literature of Mr. Gülen, he expresses it this way. Some maxims say that the fire burns where it touches. We should say that wherever fire touches, it burns me.
So,
Osman, maybe you can comment on this because I need to mute myself.
yes, Dr. Aslan Doğan is traveling on the train, so there is train announcements coming. So protecting the environment. So yeah, Hizmet, this is the pressing issues of today, of this age, and everybody has to do their share to protect the environment. So it is not an inheritance that we inherit from our elders, but it is we borrowed from our future generations. That's the common notion. Everybody states that. So in this sense, Hizmet participants view our Earth, the Earth, including all the ecosystems within it, as a trust that we must preserve for the future generations. Hizmet has done a lot of things on this, so it is important to educate young people with this mindset. So schools should do projects and run Olympiads and ask students to volunteer in these social environments and be raised with this mindset. So this is important, and Hizmet puts a special emphasis on this. And the next one, Baba, are you able to speak?
Yeah. So this is another core value, that is a human being has two sides. It is not just a material body, and it is not just a spirit. he or she has both a spirit, a soul, and also a body. Therefore, both of these dimensions should be catered to and nurtured. Humans should develop in both of these dimensions. So on the material side, that means valuing science, rationality, objective thinking. On the spiritual side, that means respecting different traditions, spiritual traditions that nourish human soul and let them develop spiritually.
Excellent. So these are some of the 12 core values that was under the whole process of the Hizmet movement is based on these core values. And these values are put into practice. So if you can because very soon we're going to listen to participants who have a direct experience with the Hizmet movement and some of these values. But could you, before we go to the respondents, could you tell us how these values are put into practice, Mr. Osman?
Yes, these values are put into practice through educational activities around the world, and also through the spiritual nourishment and growth of people in Hizmet movement. And peace aspect is put in practice through dialogue activities, dialogue, interfaith, intercultural dialogue, and any other form of dialogue is one of the Hizmet activities that brings people of different faiths, different ethnicities, different walks of life together. So that is a value that is practiced around the world. To fight, we talked about the social justice and equality. Hizmet does this by running a lot of humanitarian relief programs around the world. So in the past, before it was closed down by Turkish government, Kimse Yok Mu Foundation in Turkey had done a lot of international humanitarian aid campaigns around the world, whether it was flood or earthquake, fire, whichever part of the earth was impacted, it was running those kind of things. Plus, it was not only a humanitarian relief. Kimse Yok Mu, and currently there are different organizations in different countries. In the US, we have Embrace Relief Organization. They try to provide relief that will last longer. What I mean by that is that they run projects by bringing people resources that they can build by themselves in their town, in their villages. If there is going to be, there's a way to produce oil from a local crop. Instead of providing them with money, they will help them build a small factory. Everybody in the village can take advantage of this little factory, and they bring their crops and produce oil and sell them. If there are people able to sew and knit something, they will ask volunteers to donate machinery so they can run small sweatshops where people can produce t-shirts, trousers, pants, shoes, and they can donate some to the people in need in their community, as well as they can make a living for themselves. So it's become helping people with long-lasting projects. So culture and appreciation of culture and art. Hizmet is bringing people, young people especially, from different parts of the world through International Festival of Languages and Cultures. I'm sure it has visited South Africa as well. So that is an important way to cherish art and different cultures and express them internationally. So it brings students from younger ages from different parts of the world, first to get them to know each other, the second to appreciate their others' way of life, other cultures, others' expression. So that is inconcisely, I can say.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I think now we have a very good perspective. And I think based on what I've heard, that in order to produce this document, there was a whole lot of consultation that took place with different age groups, with different genders, social and professional backgrounds of people. So all these were taken into consideration and you produced this document, a very simple document, easy to follow, and a very user-friendly document. But right now, we are going to go to look at this document of core values of the Hizmet movement from a South African context. And we have 3 respondents, very eminent people in South African society who will be responding because they have had first-hand experience of the Hizmet movement in various capacities. So first of all, we have, and I would like to invite the first respondent, Amina Franse. She is a South African-based broadcast journalist, active in professional and media associations that include journalism training and the South African Press Council, a media complaints body for the public, for print and online journalism. She's a former political and parliamentary editor and managing editor at the South African Broadcasting Corporation, the national broadcaster in South Africa. So Amina, I would like you, based on your experiences with the Hizmet movement, how would you take into consideration the core values, and what was your experiences with the Hizmet movement in South Africa, taking these core values into consideration?
Thank you, Dr. Raj, and good evening, everybody. That was like really so enlightening, unpacking the core values. They are simple, they are fair, they are ethical, and I think it's very difficult to find fault with it. It's something that we can imbibe, that we can adopt, we can integrate in our value system. But being based in South Africa and how this applies to the South African context, we come from a very dark past, a dark apartheid past. But today we have a very liberal constitution, and many of these core values are in another way enshrined in our constitution. So I think we are very what is the word? Fortunate. We can easily adopt them. We can easily adapt them. We can easily apply them. I will speak about my personal experiences with the Hizmet movement. I was first exposed to the Hizmet movement in Turkey. I didn't know about it before. This is now many years ago. And I have experienced many of these core values in practice by so many of my what have become friends and colleagues in the Turkish community and elsewhere. I think what is important and what is core is the tolerance, the diversity, the dialogue, the selfless altruism that I've experienced in so many ways, and it is something to be absolutely valued, and as I said, integrated in whatever guidelines and whatever system we have, whether it is an adaptation of some of our constitutional values, or whether it is adapting it or comparing it or domesticating it in our Ubuntu movement, which is basically a humanist movement, which, in simple terms says, I am because we are. So that is the shared values, it's the shared core values. And then there's a lot of intercultural dialogue and diversity that I've experienced in so many of the functions and so many of the events that I've attended, by sort of Hizmet movement adherents. But one of the religions, for example, the simple 5 pillars of Islam, for example, it talks about sharing as well, and that is very important. It also talks about so many other things which can be found in the core values of the Hizmet movement. We in South Africa value the application and execution of these values, which is lived and practiced in our society in South Africa. So I think we're one of the very fortunate countries to have the Hizmet movement here, to be beneficiaries of the Hizmet movement. And as I said, the tolerance, dialogue, diversity is so important in our society. Although we come from a dark past, we have a free and fair and liberal society, but we do have problems still. So many people have not been potty trained, if you like, as far as racism is concerned, as far as tolerance is concerned, as far as dialogue is concerned. So these values are welcomed, and we take them on board. I can tell you about some of the impacts and that it had in our society. For example, in our education system, our schooling system. In South Africa, we probably have the highest per capita expenditure per child today in the democratic South Africa. But unfortunately, the results do not match the expenditure per child, unfortunately. We have structural and other problems. But the Hizmet Alliance schools, if I can call it that, they deliver the best students, the best results, not only locally, but also regionally in the SADC region and abroad. So we're very proud of that, and we're very proud to take co-ownership of it. I spoke about the 5 pillars of Islam. There's a fasting month of Ramadan, for example, and there's a lot of giving and charity that is going on throughout the year. But through the month of Ramadan, for example, there's really such a concerted effort to feed our hungry, to feed our poor, to feed our less fortunate people of all walks of life. They don't have to come and say, I'm from this religion or this class or anything else. Everyone is just welcome in prayer and in feeding and in sharing. So these are one of the pillars of Islam, for example, that's integrated and that can be found, and there's commonality with the core values of the Hizmet movement. As far as human rights and dignity is concerned, very, very important. I've experienced so much of that, and as I've said, I've experienced, selfless volunteerism and altruism in my experience over the more than 10 years now. As far as ethics are concerned, that is so vitally important. Given my journalistic background, that is all we have. Our ethics and integrity, that is all we have as a currency as journalists. And if we lose that, no one is going to take you seriously or believe what you're saying. As far as the empowerment of women is concerned, vitally important. I've seen that. I'm part of the Cultural Women and Family Group in Johannesburg. And it is amazing what can be done there. Once again, lived values, shared experiences, outreach, and tolerance in every other way. Also, our Ramadan dinners, for example, and I've been fortunate to have attended some of those, there are people of all religious faith invited to participate, to learn about what Ramadan is about, why we practice it, how we practice it. And that is probably one of the most beautiful experiences, to hear from someone from another faith to say, we didn't know, and this is thank you for sharing. So that is important. As far as the environment is concerned, vitally important. Without the environment, without planet Earth, where are we? We are nothing. But I think to go back to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the civic advocacy is very, very important. We live in a society where we have maybe material wealth for some, but we have pockets, in fact, vast areas of poverty, of people not knowing their rights. And if you don't know your rights, it's very, very difficult to get on in life, whether it is education, whether it is getting a job, whether it is informing yourself, or even how to vote. We just had local government elections recently. So these are practical values that are being practiced and lived in the society, in and around me. I'm very much part of being a beneficiary of the Hizmet movement and its philosophy. It's service, probably service above self. And, not to play on the word service or service delivery, but there's a lack of that in our current society in South Africa. It shouldn't be that way, but that's how it is at the moment. We have our ills, but we do have respect for the rule of law. And I think we'll catch up on the corrupt ones. We'll catch up on those who have hollowed out, our resources, our state, and bring them to book. But coming back to our dark past, unfortunately, what we have just described, the values, the core values that you have just so eloquently described and displayed on screen, and something that we can adopt. Unfortunately, in your mother country, Turkey, this is not appreciated.
Yes.
You're totally misunderstood, and as a result, thousands of people are being suspected of being practicing or adherents of the Hizmet movement. Thousands of people are in prison. I don't have to tell you that. Women and children and men and journalists and judges and just academics and non-academics and ordinary people from all walks of life. That is most unfortunate. We have our freedom in South Africa. We have our democratic freedom in South Africa because the world stood up in solidarity and in several more ways. We were not alone. Of course, we have our dark moments. We've had deaths, we've had detentions, we've had exile for many years. But the international community helped and assisted and supported and recognized at least two of the liberation movements. The biggest liberation movement is in government, more the ruling party today. So I would like to say, and I would like to believe that one day, sooner than later, that adherents of the Hizmet movement won't be called terrorists, but more altruists, democrats, as civic and social activists. I think the Hizmet movement is also not politicized. That is where the comparison stops. In South Africa, our liberation movements, we had to be politicized, and we took up arms in self-defense. We took up arms for the right to dignity and human rights. And this is not the case with the Hizmet movement. It's adhering to peace. It propagates peace and tolerance and dialogue and understanding. Nothing wrong with that. But I just wanted to make that comparison as far as our South African background is concerned and where you are at the moment. So I'll stop here now and maybe leave my colleagues to continue. There's a lot more that I can talk about. I've not overlooked it. I've made notes, but I've probably talked enough for the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I mean, I think you've articulated the South African context and your experiences with the Hizmet movement and the core values so nicely. So, it gives us such a great perspective. More so, where you made reference to the current leadership in Turkey. They are violating every one of these core values. If you look at every one of these core values, it's not part of their vocabulary. It's not in their dictionary. The leader and all the supporters in Turkey currently do not understand any one of these core values, despite the fact it is so simple to understand. And and as political leaders, the people that they are supposed to be overseeing, right? And if you do not subscribe to this, you cannot be a leader. You need to be taken out of that leadership position. That's one. And the other important factor is that these core values need to be promoted extensively, especially to the young people in schools and so on, so that we are developing proper leaders, not leaders like that we currently get in many countries, in Africa and other parts of the world where they do not have any ethics whatsoever and no value for human beings. Right, so now we are going to a very, very old colleague of mine that, we've interacted so often. And Bilal Leslie Onolo Moigi, we formed SOJAC, which is a social justice advocacy campaign that deals with many of these values, especially the one for respect for humans and fundamental human rights. So Bilal is a former freedom fighter and an anti-apartheid activist who was engaged in the liberation struggle to set South Africa free. He extensively was involved in advocating and promoting social justice through arts and sports programs, campaigns at schools, clubs, and community level. He currently is very active in the food security space, sourcing and supplying nutritional emergency food relief for vulnerable women and children. He's also actively involved at organizing sports events for people living with disabilities. And he's currently the managing owner of Mohagi Sport Pty Limited, a cancer wellness through sport company. And I must say, God is great, right? Bilal has recently been unwell, but he's recovering because he has so much more work to do to ensure that the core values of the Hizmet movement is promoted extensively. So without much further ado, Bilal, you give us your experience. You've been extensively involved with the Hizmet movement at all levels. Can you tell us your experiences and how these values are incorporated in those experiences? Bilal, you're mute. Unmute yourself.
Yes, I have. Good evening and salaam alaikum. I'm currently under darkness. We have load shedding. So if I disappear from the screen, it will be disappearing in my past. It's dark at the moment, there's electricity. I've just lit my computer. I have had the blessings of experiencing the Hizmet movement on different levels. My first experience was internally in South Africa at the mosque during one Ramadan, when I met the Hizmet movement people. And I was curious about this movement because I've read a lot about it. Subsequent to that, during Ramadan, as most of the people know, that we do have a time when we break. I was drawn to the program that when I read
I think the latency, maybe due to the load shedding.
Yes, my lights are back and now Moagi is gone, but he'll come back.
No, I think he's back, he's back. Just unmute. Unmute yourself.
Listen. Yeah.
Right, we can hear you.
I haven't touched.
Right, you can go ahead.
Am I still there? Am I okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Dr. Raj?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. My experience with Hizmet movement, for example, if you look at our constitution in South Africa, section 1 that talks about dignity, promotion of dignity. What the Hizmet movement has done in South Africa is to package their programs through education and outreach programs. A lot of those outreach programs that I've had the blessings of attending. For example, they have the Ubuntu and the Nelson Mandela annual awards, or where they promote also diversity.
I think Mr. Bilal Mohagi, we'll come back to you. Let's just get your latency issue sorted out. And we go now to, we'll come back to you, Mohagi, because Mr. Shobadin needs to leave. So let's hear him and we'll come back to you while you get your latency issue sorted out. So Mr. Shobuddin, you also, you as the past headmaster of the Islamia College in Cape Town, chairman of the Muslim Views Board, the founder of the Salt River Heritage Society, and also a radio presenter and a social activist. What are some of your experiences? I know you have to leave urgently. So what are some of your experiences with the Hizmet movement? You've been very closely associated through the school, etc. But could you, give us some more experiences that you had, with the values that you've just outlined?
Yeah, thanks, Raj. Good evening and salam alaikum. Yeah, my relationship with the movement has been an incredibly positive one, because since I met the first people who came to Cape Town to found a school, I kind of helped and assisted where I could. And since then, it's always interested me that a movement of this nature has found it useful to drop anchor at the southernmost tip of Africa. And that's quite an interesting move on the part of the movement, if I may put it that way. And I found it interesting that the work of Hizmet is much like what the Gift of the Givers, for example, do in South Africa, where they serve humanity both in times of dire need and also obviously when there are opportunities to assist in the growth and promoting communal stability. That benefits everybody, obviously. So whilst the 12 points that were raised earlier on form the kind of bedrock of the movement, it's important to, though, understand perhaps, and this is where I thought I'll kind of bring in a different take in what I saw the movement was doing. In this need to steady human endeavor, you find that whenever people have ascribed to themselves a degree of omnipotence, struggling with the word a little bit, and they think they're all conquering and they ultimate decision makers and so on. This have always been key markers in the development and growth of the human race. And this is obviously, has a positive and critically also very negative consequences. We know, for example, the speed and scale of economic activity, the drive towards all-embracing consumerism coupled with divisive modes of global financial systems. And we know that the underbelly of these systems is greed. And this has an outcome, obviously, that results in a very negative impact on the global humanity. And interestingly, over millennia, humanity's always had to redirect to a newer path. And I found when I first met the first members of the movement, that this is what they were looking at, to find a crossroad that if you ignore the signs, can cause enormous harm, not only to the human race, but also from an environmental point of view, from a planetary point of view, that the human race occupies. And therefore, it's interesting that the rise and falls of belief systems over a period of time have been almost linked to power bases that people occupy. If you look at Buddhism, for example, some 3,000 years ago, its core values are the same as the Hizmet movement. Judaism emphasizes obedience, justice, righteousness, monotheism, and interestingly, also the importance of education. And the same thing applies to Christianity, which ascribes values such as humility, faith, charity, virtue, and courage as its foundation. So all the major religions have had this as the core, the Hizmet movement's core values as the core of those religious movements over millennia. And the same obviously applies to Islam. We know now, and everybody would know, that the final word of God Almighty in the Quran when it was first revealed to our Prophet, peace be upon him, and all the other prophets, was read, which is to educate. And that's one of the core values of this movement. And clearly, this is very instructive as it blends in, it in fact coalesces in many ways all that was revealed over millennia, and it directs human behavior and endeavor to focus on improving quality of life, harboring as it is within its belly the need to be accommodative, accepting, tolerant, and these are all values that the Hizmet movement embraces. As if to emphasize this universality, God in the Quran says, "O mankind, indeed we have created you from male and female and made you peoples and tribes that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of God is those who are most righteous." And again, if you align that particular verse of the Quran to what the Hizmet movement does, it dovetails quite beautifully. And God himself, as the Lord of the universe, not only the people of Islamic faith, in the first chapter, which we know now as Surah Fatiha, talks about the God being the Lord of the universe, not of Muslims, not of the Hindus, not of Buddhists, etc. He is the Lord of the universe. In other words, it's an all-embracive value system, and that again ties in with what the Hizmet movement does. And therefore, today's topic is important because what the Hizmet movement has done is, whether willingly, knowingly, or unwillingly, unknowingly, have absorbed these values over a period of time. And now you see this document that clearly espouses in very simple terms its values over a period of time. So the survival of humanity, I understand, is dependent on human kindness, as acts of kindness, in fact, encourage this altruism and benevolence that we always talk about. And the Hizmet movement incorporates these and other universal values in its compendium of actions and activities. Without restating this, it's important to note that in both ancient and modern human history, whenever a struggle to assert common ethics and values presented itself, those, believe it or not, controlling the levers of power have always exercised their might by eliminating every conceivable opposition. Now, I'm not going to cast aspersions at the current ruling party in Turkey, but one can again see the link between a movement that espouses human values and those who are almost insistent on controlling the levers of power. So the Hizmet movement, from what my observations and my interaction over the years that I've known its people, and they're not out there for me anymore and my family, because we've become one in a sense. We're in and out of each other's homes. We're contacting each other on a regular basis. So you can see that the value of the movement has moved beyond trying to envelope itself and look inwardly, and was almost belly gazing or navel gazing, as one puts it. So when the searchlight of the political machinations of the incumbent political setup in Turkey is considered, it is proof that this movement is successful. And sadly, one must perhaps also add that many of the current supposed leadership of the movement, of the current governance in Turkey, were members of the Hizmet movement at one point in time, until the searchlight shone on them, and they obviously had to dive for cover in the way that they have done, and that's all part of history now. And therefore, all major religious epochs have had these challenges. It's not anything new, and therefore, I see the movement in a similar context. Human history has always taught us that as any other movement, any system, any attempt at monitoring abuse, corruption, disrespect for rule of law, and protecting the status quo will and has always been opposed by a political elite. And this is why the Hizmet movement finds itself being declared a terrorist organization, for example. And this applied from the marauding Vikings to Genghis Khan, to the Crusades, to the modern day European colonial powers, for example. These are all aspects of clique domination and subjugation to protect vested interests. And the Hizmet movement, in my view, non-aligned as it is In its presentation and operation, it focuses largely, in my view, on educating new generations, retooling the youth to occupy spaces of building relationships and engaging in positive dialogue, which will always be targeted to infiltrate and counter the power bases of religious ruling elites worldwide. And the Hizmet movement, in my view, is no exception. And therefore, continuing, in my view, on the path it has carved for itself is absolutely critical. The prophetic model of patience, determination, and its resolve to carry the burden of inspiring new generations will and must always thrive. I thank you for the opportunity.
No, thank you so much, Shahabuddin. You've articulated some very, very interesting points on the Hizmet movement that, was touched on in terms of the core values. I don't see Bilal here anymore. While we're trying to get hold of Bilal, I would like to, my personal experiences. Firstly, I'm a practicing Hindu, but throughout all my interactions with the Hizmet movement, nowhere was there any form of indoctrination or any form of conversion to the values aspired by the Islamic faith, nowhere. So all these values and all the work that is being done by the Hizmet movement cut across cultural and racial backgrounds, and they serve the needs of humanity. The key word here is humanity, the spirit of Ubuntu, like Amina spoke about. I am me because of you. I cannot exist in isolation without your existence. So that is my personal experience. Now, I have had a number of experiences here locally in South Africa, which was touched on by Amina, as well as Mordi was just speaking about it. Firstly, the Ramadan, during Ramadan, where we were invited to a number of these events, where the opportunity to bring people together over a meal, to break fast and share the culture, the religion, and aspects with other cultural groups is strengthening relationships. I have utilized that in this year's Deepavali festival, whereby I promoted the ideology of the Hizmet movement by telling people in the Hindu community, why are you only distributing your food, parcels, and everything to fellow Hindus? You need to now move out of the box and do what the Turquoise Harmony Institute and the Hizmet movement is doing. They're sharing their religion and their culture with other race groups and other cultural groups. That is the spirit of promoting Deepavali. And I promise you, it worked very well, right? Because we distributed parcels to people in the townships, and we distributed, made people feel happy again. And that is what Deepavali is the festival of lights, good over evil. And it's not only, in a silo mentality in only celebrating among the Hindus. So some of these things that I've observed, the values that the Hizmet movement has been espousing as a social cohesion advocate, the main role is to promote social cohesion and nation building. And the Hizmet movement, together with this concept document of core values, is a white paper that can be used by any organization, any structure. It can also be very, very comfortably used in life orientation in schools, right? Whereby a document of this nature can be made available to the Department of Basic Education, whereby they can use it as a basis of promoting value-based education to children. Apart from the sciences and the humanities and so on, very little is being done in terms of life orientation. Life orientation has been reduced to just another subject in schools, whereby it doesn't even have a value at university level. When you work out the points for university, the life orientation paper that is written by a grade 12 individual doesn't hold any value. That is a total misnomer. It is morally unjustifiable. So I would believe that a document of this nature needs to be produced for the basis of giving a sense of direction for teachers in schools to teach core values to children who are the future leaders of any particular country. And I think that is very well. I've had an exposure of a number of events and activities in South Africa, in Cape Town, in Johannesburg, as well as in Durban. But more so, I was blessed to have been invited by the Hizmet movement to visit Turkey on 2 occasions. And I've seen that whatever was written in paper here, the values that have been put together in this document, I've seen it in action. I've seen it happening in Turkey. And to me, where people have been labeled as terrorists, promoting value-based education to people did not gel with me. Where people that belong to the Hizmet movement were labeled as doing harm to society, I cannot believe that. Because I've seen in Turkey and the various programs and activities that were being implemented in a practically orientated way was basically centered around these values that have been presented here today. Then I've also had an opportunity of visiting Australia, in Melbourne, in Perth, as well as in Sydney. The Hizmet movement and all its aligned structures in all these places that I've seen it working. I've seen the work in promoting culture, not only amongst Islamic groups, but all cultures, the multi-faith societies and the interfaith dialogues, as well as sharing values and so on, will be promoted. So this document here, I've seen in action. All we need to now is to make it infectious, like a virus. Unfortunately, we're going through a very dark period in human history with the COVID-19 pandemic. But this core values of the Hizmet movement must be like a virus that must be infecting every member of society all over the world, so that they can be injected with enthusiasm and with determination to become human once again. Because there was a saying, a great philosopher once said, man has learned to fly in the sky like a bird by building these huge aircrafts. He has also learned to swim in the sea like a fish by building these cruise liners and so on. But man still needs to learn to live on this earth like a human being. And I think this document, right, and the work of the Hizmet movement is teaching people to be human again. And I think that is the crux of this entire core values that has been presented. And I must say, and I must compliment Dr. Aslandagan and Mr. Osman Ostoprak and everybody, because I've seen a number of people that have been interviewed, they've been interacted with, they've been consulted, so that this document was based on extensive research and extensive consultation. But the most praiseworthy thing about this whole thing, it is so user-friendly. It is so simple to understand. It is not an academic document that's going to be very difficult to absorb. It is so easy. A young child in school and a university student and a leader in society will all be able to implement, because it is done in very simplistic way. And that is what makes this document so good and easy to understand. I'm unable to see Mr. Moidi because he had such great, when I had an informal discussion with him in preparation for this panel discussion, he had such great ideas. It's a pity that I suspect it's because of the load shedding he may have been offline. But let's go back to Amina. Is there any concluding remarks that you have, Amina? Amina?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Can you give us some concluding remarks, please?
Yes, that has been so well articulated, Dr. Raj, and Mr. Shahabuddin, and two of our co-authors of this very important document. We should adopt it and integrate it, like I've already said. I think I can only wish you all the very, very best. I think it's a very good idea to have put this on paper after an extensive consultation process. I think it's a very, very good idea to have done that, because it almost will become like the constitution, if you like, of the Hizmet movement. It will be something that can be tried and tested in court, for example. Adherents of the Hizmet movement who are told they are terrorists and charged for terrorism and prosecuted and things like that. I think this must be a basis of a document of legal defense, if you like, in terms of what these so-called adherents are. I mean, many people are not openly. Hizmet movement is a humanist movement, but you've put it on paper. So I think it helps to articulate what the Hizmet movement stands for. It can only be for the common good of those who are at the receiving end. Mr. Mandela and so many others were called terrorists in the past in South Africa, and this is a very dark period, I think, that the mother country Turkey is going through. But I really welcome this, and I think we can work with it. And I would love us to follow up on what Dr. Raj has also indicated. These values are core, and it could be introduced at a very basic level, but also at the top leadership level. These are basic. They are selfless, and it contributes to a better and more tolerant environment, better and more tolerant world. So I think these values are going to get feet around the world, but particularly also in Turkey. For those people who couldn't articulate why they are members of or adherents of, or why they're practicing a kind of humanism of the Hizmet movement, this will give them something in black and white, something on paper as well to carry forward. So thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you very much. It was my singular pleasure and honor to be sharing this platform, and looking forward to the next interaction.
I think you touched on a very important point, is that human rights lawyers, as a group of a panel of human rights lawyers need to get together and take this document, which outlines the core values of the Hizmet movement, and go to the international courts to fight against what is happening currently in Turkey. Because basically, this is what the Hizmet movement, why are they being persecuted? Why are so many women being jailed in prisons in Turkey under such serious human rights violations, right? So I think, this should be planting the seeds for attending to the crisis that is presently being experienced in Turkey at the international courts. And I think that's a very, very important point. Yes, thank you so much, Amina. Thank you for your time. Mr. Rumani Shahabuddin, you got any concluding remarks?
Yes, I do. I agree with Amina. I think it's an excellent document. In fact, I would go one step further. It's a document that must be shared with governments across the world to be inserted in every country's constitution.
Correct.
It's that powerful because it is so simple. It's not an elaborate document. It outlines quite simply the true and the most beautiful values that we as human beings should have to interact with each other, make sure that dialogue is the kind of underpinning quality, underpinning value that we should have as human beings, and to ensure also that future generations live by these precepts. I think that's quite critical. And much of what we're experiencing as humanity is because we have shed these values that's now enshrined in this document. And the more we make this document available to the rest of the world, in my view, as quickly as possible, it needs to be shared. If we going to navel gaze for long on this document, the losers will be the rest of the world. So I would appeal to the authors of this document to find means and ways of sharing this document on as wide a platform as possible, as soon as possible. Those are my concluding remarks. I really thank the movement for inviting me, and I enjoyed the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Romani. Can you imagine the political dilemma that we are currently facing in terms of hung councils and hung municipalities and the coalition politics that are not working, people are not talking? Can you imagine if a political party had this core values as the manifesto? Can you imagine how much of people will have voted for that particular political party? If somebody was coming with a manifesto showing this political values here, this core values, which is promoting humanity among citizens, can you imagine how many people it would have attracted in terms of votes? And I think, like you rightfully pointed out, Mr. Romani, this document should be in the constitution of countries. It should be as part of an addendum to ensure that it gains traction in bringing societies and people together. Now let's look at our authors of this particular document to get their final. After you've listened to all the respondents, can you, Mr. Osman, before we end today, can you give us your concluding remarks in bringing this discussion? And before I listen to Dr. Aslan Dogan, can you tell us something about
Thank you, Dr. Raj. Personally, for myself, I cannot accept the description of author because there has been many authors of this document. In fact, every Hizmet participant is an author because these are living values. So by living these values, they have been an author. They have been practitioners of these values. And we just as a group of people were able to pen it down and help implement different perspectives into this one single document. So I am a mere participant in this process. The last words that I can say is that these values are being found very powerful because people who have been in contact with Hizmet has witnessed them in action. So it is kind of like actions put in the words. So that's like action came first and the words came after in this example. That's why they are powerful. And the second thing, if you offer a more concise, a better like a way to describe Hizmet, as Mr. Gilan described it in many occasions, that if one drop of this whole values are this is a movement of people who have gathered around high human values. So whoever share these values can find a space in Hizmet, can work, or any movement can be called Hizmet, any Hizmet can be called any movement. So it is a high human value shared by humanity all. Thank you for inviting me, and it was a pleasure to be on this panel and sharing the panel with my co-participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Osoprak. Thank you. And I just got a word that Mr. Bilal Mohagi's laptop is dead due to load shedding. He could not reconnect, but we wish him well, and I'm sure there will be another opportunity for him to interact at a platform like this. Dr. Aslan Durgan, your final concluding remarks.
Thank you for this opportunity and for your time and participation. Sometimes I ask people, imagine the world map, the political world map. You have boundaries around countries and you have colors. if you imagine the world religion map, you will find regions and groups, patches with colors based on the majority religion. But try to imagine a world where, where you imagine people whose lives are shaped by hope and the recognition of our interdependence, our common humanity, versus people whose lives are shaped by fear and separation. You'll find that that's a very different map. And in that map, I think that we are in the same patch. So this document, in a sense, outlines some of the values that bring us together as fellow humans. And I hope that it can be a starting point for enhancing these relationships, both quantitatively and qualitatively.
Excellent. Thank you. We on schedule finishing. So we'd like to thank the Turquoise Harmony Institute for providing this platform. It was a very interesting discussion. The core values that have been presented is very enriching, it's very inspiring and very educational. I am convinced that in every part of society, in every sector in society, we need to ensure that this core values is being distributed and promoted extensively. So I would like to thank, firstly, our panelists, Dr. Aslan Dogan and Mr. Osman Ozdoprak for their time and effort in assisting us and giving us a sense of direction in terms of the presentations. And our respondents, Amina France, thank you so much. You've made such a valuable contribution, as well as Mr. Shobadin Rumani. Thank you so much. We wish you all well. And we would like to see you at one of Turquoise Harmony's panel discussions again. Thank you so much. And once again to the organizers for this panel discussion, Mr. Hayan and Mr. Hayden and the Turquoise Harmony Institute, thank you so much for this platform. Continue doing the wonderful work that you are doing as part of the Turquoise Harmony Institute. We'd like to end off now. Thank you.
For your time, your effort, your support all the time. Hope to see you face to face one day in South Africa, Mr. Osman, Mr. Alp. So it will be great to host you in South Africa.
Inshallah. Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Have a good evening, everyone. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amina.
All the best. Bye.
Okay.